Welcome to the How to Play video for Hunt the Ravager, published by Kolossal Games, designed by Clinton Morris, featuring art by Andrew Bosley. In this video, we're going to focus on the two-player 1 versus 1 game, which is the standard game for Hunt the Ravager, though the rulebook does include rules for 3 and 4 players. Let's begin. To set up for a game of Hunt the Ravager, shuffle the 35 location cards and deal them into a 5x7 grid made up of 5 rows and 7 columns. Locations contain 15 countrysides, 4 lakes, 5 shrines, 5 villages, and 6 war-torn areas. Place the grid markers, numbered 1 through 5 in numerical order, to mark each of the 5 rows. Then place the remaining grid markers, letters A through G, at the top, marking all 7 of the columns. Once both sets of grid markers are placed, place the turn tracker next to slot number 1. Then give each player one of the Hunt the Ravager scoring sheets. You are now ready to begin with the first Vendetta. The standard game of Hunt the Ravager consists of 2 Vendettas, one player representing the Ravager, and the other representing the Empress and her samurai who are hunting the Ravager. Each Vendetta will consist of 3 rounds, and each round consisting of 5 turns, a maximum of 5 turns. During a round, the Ravager will be trying to deliver a treasure to their lair, and each round, as I said, is a maximum of 5 turns. To begin the Vendetta, you will determine who will play as the Ravager during the first Vendetta. The Ravager will be given a game screen, 13 track tokens, and 5 rage tokens. The Empress player will be given 3 samurai standees, the 3 corresponding readiness tokens, 3 treasure tokens, and a treasure setup card. For the purposes of this video, these items will remain off camera so that you can see the full grid of locations. The Ravager player will select one of the locations on the board that is not a lake or a war-torn location, and that location will become the Ravager's lair. The lair is marked up here in the upper left-hand corner of the square and must be kept secret during gameplay. The Empress is given 5 defense points that the Empress player will be able to use in order to place the 3 treasure tokens around the board. Point values for treasure placement are shown here on this treasure setup card. Treasures can also not be placed on a lake or war-torn location and cannot be adjacent either orthogonally or diagonally to one another. The Empress cannot spend more than 5 defense points to place these treasures, and any unused defense points are worth 1 victory point at the end of the game. Our Empress player in this example has chosen to place treasure tokens here, here, and here. Notice all 3 tokens are in a countryside. They are not on war-torn or lake regions. And according to our setup card, we have spent a total of 3 points. 2 points to place this treasure, none to place this one, and 1 point to place this treasure. So we've spent a total of 3 points to place those treasures, meaning we have 2 defense points left over, which will be 2 victory points at the end of the game. A Vendetta is played over 3 rounds, and each round consists of the Ravager player trying to deliver treasure to their lair, while the Empress works to prevent it from happening. Successful delivery of a treasure is worth 4 VP for the Ravager player. If the Ravager fails to deliver a treasure, no VP are awarded, and the treasure is simply discarded. To set up for the round, the Empress will place their 3 samurai at different intersections. The intersections are the spots that are made up of 4 locations. So for example, this samurai is located at this intersection, which consists of these 4 locations. During round setup, the Ravager player will select one treasure that is in play, remove it from the board and put it in their own play area, and will place a track token on that particular space that they took the treasure from. The location of that treasure will also be noted in the start of round box for round number 1, or 2, or 3, depending on which round we are currently in. So in this case, we would mark D4 as the location that we started in the round. This is also the start location for the Ravager themselves. Each turn consists of the following steps: the Ravager move step, taken by the Ravager player, the Samurai move step, taken by the Empress player, the Samurai action step, taken by the Empress player, and finally the Ravage Declare step taken by the Ravager player. During the Ravager move step, the Ravager moves from its current location to an adjacent location, either orthogonally or diagonally. The Ravager must move at least once and can move a maximum of 2 locations. Moving 2 locations can include moving 1 location and then back to where the Ravager started its movement. The Ravager player is not required to declare to the Empress player whether they moved 1 or 2 locations. Every Ravager movement is recorded on the score sheet, and the final location written on the sheet must reflect the Ravager's current location at the end of the step. In other words, for turn number 1, the Ravager would write the grid where they're moving from. So we started in D4 here. We can move to any adjacent space that is surrounding our location at this point, either orthogonally or diagonally. So we could move from D4 to E4 if we would like. If we did that, we would simply mark E4 in this first box. If we took a second movement, maybe we moved up to E3, we could place E3 in this second box. Whatever our last location that we wrote on the box is, must accurately reflect our current location. During the first turn of each round, the Ravager can move without spending rage tokens or ruining locations, though they can choose to ruin a location if they wish. On any subsequent turns of the round, the Ravager must either spend a rage token by returning 1 of their 5 rage tokens to the supply, or they can ruin a location in order to move. If the Ravager cannot do either, they cannot spend rage tokens because they've already all been spent, or they cannot ruin locations because there's no legal location that can be ruined, the Ravager has been defeated, ending both the round as well as the Vendetta. If rage is spent for movement, 1 rage token is taken from the Ravager's play area and returned to the supply. Whether you move 1 or 2 locations as the Ravager only costs a single rage token, so you can move 2 locations for a single rage token. Once out of rage tokens, the Ravager player must ruin a location in order to move. If they cannot, they are defeated and the Vendetta is ended. Any unused rage tokens are worth 1 victory point at the end of the Vendetta. To ruin a location, the Ravager chooses either their current location or an adjacent one, again orthogonal or diagonal, that is not a lake, war-torn, or already ruined, and turns it to its ruined side by flipping the card over. Again, moving 1 or 2 locations only requires a single ruin action to be taken, and all ruined locations are worth 1 victory point each at the end of the Vendetta. Of course, ruining locations does give the Empress player a little bit of information about where you may be located as the Ravager. During the Samurai move step, the Empress player can move each Samurai that started its turn in an intersection up to 2 intersections away, meaning that we could move any of the Samurai that are currently on the board up to 2 intersections because they've all begun their turn in an intersection. So we could do 2 movement for this particular Samurai. We could move this Samurai a couple of places, and we could move this one a single spot. Movement takes place left to right, either horizontal or up and down vertically. There is no diagonal movement, so this Samurai could not move this direction. They must move horizontal or vertical. Again, the Samurai can be moved in any order that the Empress player wishes. Samurai are not required to move, but each one can only be moved once and only during the Samurai move step. Any Samurai that begins its turn on a location, such as this, will not be available to take a move action on this particular turn. Once all Samurai have been moved, or the Empress player has declared that they are done with the Samurai move phase, each Samurai is able to take a single action. Readiness tokens are used to keep track of which Samurai has taken an action. So we have 3 readiness tokens that represent the 3 Samurai, 1, 2, and 3, for the numbers 1, 2, and 3 of the Samurai. As we take actions, the token for that Samurai is simply flipped to its exhausted side, and once all tokens are exhausted, the Samurai action step is over. Actions that are available to the Empress player during the Samurai action step include Track the Ravager, Question the Elders, Consult the Kami, Forced March, Hunt the Ravager, continue the hunt, and return from the hunt. Let's look at each of these available actions. Track the Ravager. To track the Ravager, the Empress player will select a single location that is part of a samurai's intersection, cannot be a lake, a war-torn area, or an already ruined location, and the Empress will ask the Ravager if they have visited that particular location during the current round. So as the Empress player, I could say, with Samurai 3, I could question the Ravager and ask the Ravager if they have been to this location at E3 during the current round. If no, as the Ravager, if I've not been to that location, I simply say no, and nothing happens. You are required to truthfully answer your questions. If yes, if I have been to that location as the Ravager, I will place one of my track tokens on that location. We will then flip the readiness marker for Samurai 3 face down to indicate that Samurai 3 has taken their action this turn. Question the Elders. This action can only be performed if one or more villages is part of the samurai's intersection. For example, Samurai 2 does not have a village as part of its intersection. Neither does Samurai 1. Samurai 1 has 2 lakes and a couple of countrysides. Samurai 3 is adjacent to a village, so Samurai 3 could take the Question Elders action. When taking the Question the Elders action, the Empress declares which village location the Elders are being questioned in, and the action is resolved. The Ravager must place a track token in the village and in any adjacent locations that are not war-torn or ruined that the Ravager has occupied during the current round. So if I, as the Ravager player, have been in this village, as well as possibly E4, I have to place track tokens on both of those locations to indicate my movement or give a clue as to how my movement has proceeded. Again, regardless of the outcome, whether the Ravager has placed track tokens or not, the Samurai that took the action has their readiness token flipped to the exhausted side. Consult the Kami. The Consult the Kami action can only be performed if one or more shrines is part of the Samurai's intersection. For example, Samurai 2 has a shrine that is part of its intersection, so Samurai 2 could take the Consult the Kami action. To take this action, the Empress simply declares which shrine location the Kami are being consulted in, and the action is resolved. So the Empress would say, I'm consulting the Kami at B5. To resolve this action, the Empress then selects any single location on the board, including war-torn or ruined locations, and asks if the Ravager has occupied it during the current round. If no, nothing happens. However, if the Ravager has been there, they place a track token on that particular location. Again, regardless of the outcome, that Samurai's readiness token is flipped to the exhausted side. Force March. The Empress can use a Samurai action as an additional point of movement to a connected intersection. So the Empress could say, I wish to use Samurai 1's action step as an additional movement to move that Samurai. Again, this would exhaust that Samurai's token. And using the Force March action, one of the Samurai could move up to 3 intersections total on any given turn. Hunt the Ravager. A Samurai will choose a single location that is part of its current intersection and moves on to that location. So if Samurai 3 were going to hunt the Ravager, they would move into that location space. The Empress player then asks the Ravager player if they currently occupy that location. If no, then play continues as normal. If yes, the Ravager does occupy that location currently, the Ravager is defeated. Players should then proceed to the end of round. Note that any Samurai moved to a location as the result of an unsuccessful hunt action are not automatically returned to an intersection and are unavailable to move on the next turn. Continue the hunt. This action can only be performed if a Samurai starts its turn on a location as the result of a failed Hunt the Ravager action on the previous turn. The Empress declares that the Samurai will continue the hunt, and the action is resolved in the same manner as the Hunt the Ravager action that we just discussed. Return from the hunt. This action can also only be performed if a Samurai begins its turn on a location as the result of a failed Hunt the Ravager action on its previous turn. The Empress declares the samurai as returning from the hunt and moves the samurai to any intersection that the location is a part of. So any of the 4 intersections are valid movement. This does exhaust the samurai's readiness token, and so returning from the hunt does use the samurai's entire action. This does, however, free up the samurai to be available during the move action of the next turn. After the samurai action step is completed, we move to the Ravager declares step. During the Ravager declares step, the Ravager declares truthfully whether or not they are currently occupying the location of their lair. If not, a new turn begins. If yes, then the Ravager circles the location on their score sheet, records that they delivered the treasure, and players proceed to the end of round. At the end of a turn, you will advance the turn marker to the next space in numerical order down the left side of the map. If the turn marker at the end of the turn is at the 5th space on the left side of the map, then the Ravager is defeated and the round is over. The Empress player flips all 3 readiness tokens to their ready side, and players will begin a new turn, beginning with the Ravager move step. End of round. If this is the end of the 3rd round, then proceed to the end of the Vendetta steps. Otherwise, remove all track tokens from locations and begin a new round. This starts with the placement of the Empress's samurai and the Ravager selecting one of the other in-play treasure tokens, noting its location on the corresponding start of round space on their score sheet, and beginning with the Ravager move step. End of the Vendetta. A Vendetta ends at the completion of the 3rd round, or if the Ravager cannot take a move action. Players score at the end of the Vendetta in the following ways. The Ravager player will score 4 victory points for each captured treasure, 1 victory point for each remaining rage token they have, and 1 victory point for each ruined location currently on the map. The Empress will receive 1 victory point for each remaining defense point. If this is the end of the 1st Vendetta, proceed back to the Vendetta setup. Players will trade roles, with the Empress becoming the Ravager and the Ravager becoming the Empress, also trading any necessary components, and will play a 2nd Vendetta with the same round and turn setup as before. If this is the end of the 2nd Vendetta and both players have had a turn as the Ravager and also as the Empress, the game is over. At the end of the game, players will compare their scores, totaling their Ravager score with their Empress score. The player with the highest total score is the winner. If tied, the player who scored the most VP as the Ravager is the winner. If still tied, the player who captured the most treasure is the winner. If still tied, the player who ruined the most locations is the winner. And if still tied, the game is considered a draw. As mentioned previously at the start of this video, the rulebook for Hunt the Ravager does include rules for a 4-player as well as a 3-player game. Those rules will not be covered in this particular video, so I encourage you to consult the rulebook, which you can find on Board Game Geek. Thank you for watching this how to play video of Hunt the Ravager, and happy hunting!